Okay, real quick before we dive into this episode on your nervous system, I want you to know that there's a free resource on my website, which is calmmamacoaching.com. And it's called the Stress Reset Guide for Moms. And in it, I have a bunch of hacks and ideas and interesting ways to reset your nervous system. So if you don't have a copy of that, I highly encourage you to go grab that and then listen to this episode because it'll help you follow along as I talk through some of these stress resets. Today, I'm going to talk about your nervous system. So let's talk about nervous system. I want to give you an idea of what I'm even talking about. On this podcast, I have taught you quite a few times about your stress response, about what happens to you when you experience misbehavior, and how your brain interprets that as an emergency and it activates your stress response and you get flooded. Your amygdala goes, sounds off the alarm, and it sends a message to your pituitary gland and your adrenal glands, and your body gets pumped with cortisol and adrenaline and epinephrine, right? So you've learned about that before. You know about stress juice. That's what I call that chemical cocktail that your body gets flooded with. You understand about your amygdala. If you're new to this podcast, no problem. I'm going to walk you through it today. But I'm going to walk you through your nervous system today. But if you have been a long-time listener, then you kind of understand how stress affects you and affects your parenting. So I wanted to talk today about the same concept, but really expand a little bit about your nervous system and help you see what is happening to you when your nervous system gets activated, when your stress response gets activated. But today we're going to add a new level and we're going to talk about how you calm yourself using your nervous system. So a big part of my program is calm, right? It's all about the parent managing their own stress and their own emotion so that you don't dump all of that out on your child. That's where yelling comes from. Yelling is a stress response. That's where emotionally checking out and zoning out on your phone comes from. That is a strategy to cope with overwhelm. And so we want to decrease your overwhelm, and we want to give you better tools to regulate your nervous system and manage your stress response so you don't dump that on your kids, right? So today we're going to talk about your central nervous system, which is sometimes also thought of as your sympathetic nervous system. And then I'm going to talk about your parasympathetic nervous system. So these two parts of your nervous system, they work together in order to help you respond to stressful situations and then decrease that stress response. So if you think about your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system, they are like a seesaw or a teeter-totter. As one is activated, one is decreased. And then they start to kind of swap places and the other one takes over. And so we want to be able to be like response flexible. We want to respond to stressful situations, and then we want to be able to reset our nervous system. So if you think about the Calm Mama process and all of those tools in Calm, we talk about the pause break. And the pause break is really a pause and reset. So we're going to pause our stress response as much as we can, and we're going to reset our nervous system. So today I'm going to talk about what nervous system that you're resetting, and that is called the parasympathetic nervous system. So real quick recap is that essentially you have an information highway running through your body at all times. And that is, your nervous system is kind of this giant information highway, and it takes in information through your senses, and it tells the brain how to respond to what we are experiencing. So you take in information with your eyes, with your senses, your smell, your touch, your environment, and then that is how we interpret the information we're receiving. With our thoughts, we interpret what we're seeing, and then that triggers our stress response. That triggers our nervous system to activate the sympathetic nervous system. So you get all this information, your brain interprets that information, and it tells your body how to respond. And it uses neurons to do that. So there's all the sorts of neurons you have in your brain. All neurons mean is a brain cell. So it's just a different fancy way to call a brain cell. And so you have all these neurons in your brain, and they send signals throughout your body, they using the central nervous system. So if your brain decides that something is dangerous, it interprets something dangerous, like a kid spitting in your face, or a bad letter grade, or a child who spills, really hot, really sticky apple juice all over the table, your brain is going to be like, oh my God, this is an emergency, and it's going to activate your sympathetic nervous system. And we often call that fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn. And then you get flooded with stress juice. And the stress juice is designed to give you that oomph to respond, whether that means running away or fighting or hiding or freezing, playing dead, or trying to people please. That's what we call fawn response. So your stress juice is like all those chemicals that kind of give your body that adrenaline boost or that hit of epinephrine and cortisol that then makes it so that you can respond. And so that's actually really healthy. You need to have your stress response. Stress in itself isn't wrong or bad. What happens though is our brain misinterprets things. Like I said, it misinterprets that sticky apple juice all over the table dripping onto the floor is an emergency that you have to respond to. Now, of course, you're going to want to get up and like wipe it down, if you can, but it's not an actual life or death emergency. You're not currently being attacked by a wild animal who's also known as a 4-year-old. Your 4-year-old is not attacking you. You're not under any threat. You're not in danger, but your brain is interpreting that scenario as dangerous, and it's activating your stress response. So when we have a little bit of stress here and there, it's good, right? That gives us we respond to our life. I think sometimes about when I was in a car accident. I was driving with my kid and a friend's kid, and I got T-boned and while going through a green light, and it was really terrifying. Now, in that moment, I am responding to a stressful situation as I should. I don't think, should I brake? Should I not? What happened here? Why did he hit me? I'm not thinking. I'm just responding. I'm putting my foot on the brake. I'm, very hyper-focused on the steering wheel. I'm getting us to safety. That is important. We need that. But what happens is if we have a lot of stressful situations in our life and we don't have enough time to recover them, we don't have enough time to activate our parasympathetic nervous system in between stressors, what happens is we become chronically stressed. We have chronic stress juice pouring through our body, cortisol pump and dump all the time, and it makes it really difficult to stay calm. That's what happens to you when you find yourself just getting angry and annoyed about every single thing your kid does. That's a signal that you're in a stress response, that you might have been in an activated stress response for a while. Now, we call that dysregulation. That's the phrase that's used in psychology and in other fields, in the medical field as well. We just call this a period of dysregulation. So what is happening is that there are times where that stress juice is way intense and too intense for the moment. And that is a temporary period of time where you are completely out of your mind, right? You're not able to regulate your nervous system. You're not able to get it back online, which essentially means you're not able to access your parasympathetic nervous system. So today, I wanted to talk about this because the parasympathetic nervous system is like your best friend when it comes to managing your stress response. It's the teeter-totter, the seesaw. We want to be able to practice getting ourselves into our parasympathetic nervous system so that we can easily Go up and down, stress, non-stress, stress, non-stress. I want you to be able to flow between these two states, especially as a mom, because kids, it's oftentimes coming at you quite a lot, especially if you have like more than one kid or two kids, three kids, four kids. It's like you deal with one little fire with one kid, and then the next thing you know, you have another, and then the next thing you know, you have another, and it's just constant. But there are little breaks in between. And the better you are able to access the soothing, calming parasympathetic nervous system, I'm going to give you a bunch of hacks, I promise. So we want to practice training our brain, training our body to dip into that parasympathetic nervous system so that you can go from stress to de-stress. Then the next thing comes, it's like a new thing. Oh, okay, now I have a new stressor. Now I calm down. Oh, now I have a new stressor. Now I calm down. So we want to be able to move between these two states. So the parasympathetic nervous system, it's also part of the central nervous system. It's got its own network of nerves, and it helps relax your body after periods of stress or danger. I'm thinking about that car accident again. And because I was in such a heightened state of stress that I don't remember really exhaling or sighing until the road was all clear. The ambulance had come. They had checked us out. I had some injuries, but I didn't go to the hospital. Some people took my kids. They took them home. Like everything was sort of managed. And I was sitting there by myself, oddly enough, waiting for the tow truck to come. And it was during that waiting period where I could feel the cortisol releasing, and I was able to deep breathe and, like start to feel like I was back online. And so that makes sense that it took a while until the stressor was dealt with, and then I was able to activate my parasympathetic nervous system. It actually activates on its own. It's meant to do that. But because as a parent, like I said, we have so many stressors that our parasympathetic nervous system almost gets I was going to say lazy. That's not what I mean. It's not a strong muscle. Like it gets weaker. That's what I'm trying to say. So your parasympathetic nervous system is your best friend when it comes to relieving your stress response. Now, why are you chronically distressed? Like we said, parenting it's just a lot. And so it's not your fault that you find yourself stressed a lot. I want to help you understand that like the way the modern world is set up and the way that parenting is set up right now, it is really running parents, but particularly the default parent, which is typically the mother, through the ringer every day. There is so much demand on you. And so you have a lot of stressors going on, and we don't always have time to reset our stress response. Giving your body a chance to tap into that parasympathetic nervous system is really helpful. This episode is really here to help you kind of learn how to activate your parasympathetic nervous system in times of calm. So there's like that teeter-totter, right? When your sympathetic nervous system is activated and then your parasympathetic is not, and then they teeter back and forth. But there are times when you're just in like a normal, like you wake up and everything's like fine, right? You're just in a homeostasis, you're in a regulated state. You're not working towards regulation and you're not dysregulated. You're just like kind of there. Those are the moments when you want to strengthen your parasympathetic nervous system response. We want to practice doing things when we're calm so that when we get stressed, we can activate them faster, which is super cool. So intentionally activating the parasympathetic nervous system, it teaches your body how to reset itself after a stress-induced surge. So you might have heard of the phrase, the vagus nerve. It's spelled not like Las Vegas, it's spelled Vagus. And it is your parasympathetic nervous system, 75% of it is in this vagus nerve. And so when we talk, sometimes you'll hear people talk about that, the vagus nerve, I don't think it's Vegas. I think it's Vegas. You'll hear people talking about that. And so I'm teaching you today that they're the same thing. The parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve are kind of the similar. People use the same vocabulary to describe both. So we want to be intentionally activating our vagus nerve and our other cranial nerves in order to strengthen their ability to respond. So we want to move from a weakened parasympathetic nervous system, a weakened vagus nerve, to a strengthened vagus nerve. So the crazy thing about the vagus nerve, just parenthetically, is that it connects to parts of your mouth. It extends down through your neck, through your chest, through your abdomen. So it's really where you feel stressed out, right? People will say, like, where do you notice stress in your body? They'll talk about their head, which makes sense because you have a lot of cranial nerves that are activated in your nervous system. But a lot of people will talk about, they'll point to their neck, they'll point to their throat, they'll point to their chest, they'll point to their belly. So your stress response is there, but then your stress relaxer is also there. So we're going to strengthen all of those that nervous system, the nerves and the glands and all of that. So how do you do it? You're going to need to be activating your parasympathetic nervous system as often as you can. Because your body, it's like digestion. Stress juice comes up and it's got to go out somewhere. So I don't want it to dump on your kids. I don't want you to implode and dump it on yourself. Instead, we're going to do activities, exercises, movements with our body that help activate our vagus nerve, activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So the best way to do this, in general, is to preset or reset your nervous system most days. So how do you do that? In general, remember, we regulate our nervous system through movement or rhythm, through relationship, and through reward. So you want to be activating as much as you can rhythm, moving your body in a rhythmic way. You want to be activating relationship, connection, either with yourself through journaling and self-compassion or with others. And then reward as that little dopamine kick that you get when you finish a project, when you get something done on your to-do list, when you kind of finally finish something. Even like just finishing the dishes or making a bed or whatever, it's like, pump, right? It's a little dopamine. That dopamine counters the cortisol. When you finish a task, you're communicating to your brain, look, I'm working on the future. So that means I'm safe in the present. So there's all these cool little tricks that we use with our brains that help us feel calmer. So the best thing I think in general is 20 minutes of movement each day. But it doesn't, so that's like daily rhythm. So that can be a walk. It can be a walk before dinner. It can be a morning yoga class that you watch on YouTube. It can be a night off where you just lay down and don't have to do the bedtime routine, and you can sit and read or go with a friend. This daily break is really important. Giving 20 minutes that you focus on soothing yourself. One of my best friend calls it moments of delight. And I love that. So she thinks of throughout the day, small moments of delight that she can bring into her life, lighting a candle, using a cloth napkin, taking a few extra minutes to put lotion on, making your bed, going to an exercise class, calling your friends. So what can you do to bring in more moments of delight? So if you don't have 20 minutes at one time as a mom, I don't want you to go, forget it. Darlin's ridiculous. She's making me do all this stuff. I can't even do it. It's dumb. You can make these teeny time chunks. One of them is called the shimmy shake. Okay. And it's like imagining you're a wet dog from the tip of your head to the ends of your hands and feet. You just take the wet off. So I put my hands up in the air and I just shake all the way down. And that resets you. That's like less than a minute. Another small one is a pillow hug. So when you feel overwhelmed, you can just go grab a pillow or a cushion and give it a real big hug and really breathe into it and notice the sensation of that pillow on your chest and in your hands and squeezing it and pressing down. And then while you're doing it, open your eyes and look around and start labeling objects in your space. while focusing on the hug. So that doesn't take long. You can just look around. I see right now in my space, I see a pink candle. I see a phone. I see a water bottle. I see the windows. I see the trees outside. I see a clock. So that is telling your nervous system, look, we're safe. We're okay. That doesn't take that long, right? So if you are already liking these, I want you to get the guide. So you go to calmmamacoaching.com and you can get the guide. I have one called Find the Sparkle. So all that is to take a moment to remember a time during which you felt safe, peaceful, connected, happy, or simply okay. And when you find that moment, you think of it as a sparkle. So my sparkles tend to be when I'm outside in nature or on vacation, or very specific moments where I'm like, oh yeah, that was good. I felt really good. I feel connected and safe. I think of this one moment. I was on this hike in Yosemite with my friend, and we hiked up to Nevada Falls, and watching the waterfalls just rushing down, and I just felt so safe and connected and grounded. So that's a moment of sparkle for me. It doesn't take any time for me to tap into that. And I can feel it even as I talk about it. I can feel it in my chest. I feel myself calmer. I'm activating my vagus nerve right now. So within that sparkle, when you're thinking about it, just noticing your breath, your emotions, your sensations. So when you seek these little sparkles, it trains your nervous system to seek and savor more and more positive, connected, and joyful experiences. Looking at it, it's like, this is a sparkle moment. This is one I want to remember. I want to savor this. I want to pull this in to my consciousness. You're activating your vagus nerve when you do that. You're activating your sympathetic nervous system, which is just amazing. So if you have time to do 20 minutes of movement, that is ideal for resetting your stress response. So other little de-stress mini breaks, I think about where you can sit quietly and enjoy a cup of cocoa or coffee or whatever, putting on your headphones and listening to music when your kids are playing or they're watching a show or they're on their iPads. Pull in some of those sensory pieces that help you feel calm. Put on some music, enjoy that moment. Turn on an audiobook, turn on a podcast, listen to this podcast, find the ones that you love. I have several of you that have told me that you have favorites that you've listened to many, many times. Amazing. Go back, tap into that. So when you are doing these small little moments, or the body ones that are in the workbook, like, twisting, doing a twist from side to side, putting your legs up, like laying on your back, putting your knees in the air and just kind of twisting from side to side is very, very soothing for your nervous system. So when you're doing those little exercises or you're having your cup of cocoa, trying not to think of it as ignoring your kids, but instead reframing those moments as I'm recharging, I'm resetting my nervous system. This is parenting. What I'm doing is also parenting. The cool thing is your kids will probably start doing it with you, especially if they're little. You'll be like, I'm going to be resetting my nervous system. And they're going to be like, me too. And then I love thinking about having a bunch of little kids walking around the school saying, I'm resetting my vagus nerve. Or like, I'm resetting I have a lot of stress juice. Like if we can talk about this and teach our kids how to talk about it, amazing. What is that going to look like for their adult life? They won't need to listen to this podcast, which is my goal. I want your children to grow up having been trained and coached and loved and parented by you in such a way that they feel like, oh no, I know all about my nervous system. I know all about stress juice. I know how to calm myself. I know how to self-soothe. That is amazing. If you're worried that your kids are someday going to become drug addicts or, some sort of video game addicts or something like that, or they're going to, for girls, like if we're worried about, they're going to, be so focused on boys, they will lose their self-esteem and all of that. All of those are negative coping strategies that we use to manage stress. So if you teach your kids now, they won't have to do those things, which is my goal, my hope, my dream for all of you. I want you to be thinking about your nervous system. I want you to be thinking about taking care of it as much as you can and intentionally activating the parasympathetic nervous system in order to de-stress, in order to get that stress response from active to deactive. Like I wish you could see my hands because I just keep flowing them in and out, back and forth from one side to another. Because you're not going to get rid of stress. You're not going to get rid of stress juice, nor should you. That would be terrible. That would be, under like disassociation. It would be an unhealthy response to just emotionally check out. I don't want that. I want you to be present in your life and aware and like actually deal with dangers. Like if your kid's, doing something dangerous, of course, you're not going to, I don't know, it's not that big of a deal. Like, no, you need your stress response. You're a human. But what I want for you is to not get stuck there. You don't have to stay stressed all the time. You don't have to stay activated all the time. So how do we do that? We activate our nervous system. So some simple ways, of course, is movement, daily movement, walking or stretching. I personally really like vigorous exercise, but that's not for everybody because sometimes vigorous exercise creates cortisol. So sometimes sometimes I have too much cortisol and I know I'm not supposed to do vigorous exercise that day. So instead I do a gentle yoga type of workout or stretching or something like that, or I go for walks or I go to hikes and spend time doing things like that. Connecting with adults is really important. Healthy sleep habits, spending time in nature, being really kind to yourself. So these are all just practices that you're going to be doing in order to reset your nervous system, reset your sympathetic nervous system, activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So that's your task this week. That's your homework assignment. Although this is not school and I'm not, grading you. But if you like the takeaways and you want to have something to work on this week, I want you to get the guide. Go to calmmamacoaching.com right now. Get the guide and start once a day. Pick one of the exercises. I think there's 20 to do. And you're just going to dedicate 3 or 4 minutes in the morning or whatever time in the night. I don't care what time you do it. You're going to go, I'm going to activate my parasympathetic nervous system. That's your task this week. Let me know how it goes. Contact me on Instagram at Darlene Childress. Message me. I love DMs. I also love when you send me funny reels and things like that. Everybody does that. And yeah, I just thinking about you mamas and I'm wishing you the best week. And I will talk to you next time.